This video is brought to you by Henson Shaving. If you just glance at the international headlines, you'd probably assume that Russia and Iran are basically best mates. Iran-Russian relations have been on the rise really ever since Putin came to power, and especially after Russia stepped in to support President Bashar al-Assad in 2015. But the friendship really blossomed in 2022 after Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Motivated by a mutual antipathy towards US hegemony and a mutual desire to mitigate their diplomatic isolation, Russia and Iran shifted ever closer and began negotiating a new comprehensive strategic partnership agreement, akin to the ones in place between China and Iran and between Russia and North Korea. Iranian-made Shahed drones became some of the most effective weapons in Russia's arsenal, and last month American intelligence claimed that Iran is now sending Russia thousands of short-range ballistic missiles, inviting yet further Western sanctions. However, things might not be as rosy as they seem. That strategic partnership agreement still hasn't been agreed. Iran has strenuously denied sending missiles to Russia and claims that the vast majority of Shahed drones were actually sold before the war began. The Iranian government has also abstained on UN General Assembly resolutions condemning the invasion of Ukraine, rather than siding with Russia. And in September, Iran's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee publicly warned Russia that Iran would impose, quote, heavy and costly consequences if the Kremlin continued to support Azerbaijan's efforts to build a transport link along the Armenia-Iran border, which isn't the sort of language you'd expect from geopolitical besties. So in this video, we're going to have a look at why the Russia-Iran relationship might not be quite as deep as Western commentators sometimes assume. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's get straight into it. The issue currently straining the Russia-Iran relationship is the Zangezur corridor. For context, the Zangezur corridor essentially refers to the strip of land running along the Armenia-Iran border, which connects Azerbaijan's mainland to its exclave of Nakhchivan. For years, Azerbaijan has wanted to develop transport links along the corridor to connect the two parts of Azerbaijan, but Armenia has resisted. However, in the past few years, Azerbaijan has basically used its military advantage over Armenia to force its hand on both the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh and the issue of the Zangezur corridor. After Azerbaijan essentially defeated Armenia in the Nagorno-Karabakh war in late 2020, Armenia agreed to open up the corridor in the November 2020 ceasefire, which was mediated by Russia. However, both because Armenia feels it was forced to sign the agreement under duress, and because the agreement is unclear about whether Russia or Armenia is responsible for ensuring security along the corridor, the two sides have been unable to actually agree anything since. Anyway, during a visit to Azerbaijan in September, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had a go at Armenia for, quote, sabotaging the agreement over the Zangezur corridor. This didn't go down well at all with Iran, which opposes the project, both because they consider Armenia an ally and because at least some Iranian officials worry that the corridor will eventually increase oil exports from Azerbaijan to Europe, reducing the demand for Iranian oil. This takes us on to the second obstacle in the Iran-Russia relationship: oil. In short, Iran and Russia are the two big sanctioned oil exporters, and China is basically the only large market for sanctioned oil. This has been great for China because competition between Russia and Iran has allowed China to import billions of barrels of sanctioned oil on the cheap, but it's created some tension between Russia and Iran. Russia conspicuously refused to give the Iranians access to its shadow fleet of sanction-evading tankers, and Russian companies have refused to invest serious sums in Iran's crumbling oil and gas infrastructure. This speaks to a wider problem for the Russo-Iranian relationship. Their economies are just too similar. They export and import similar things, and where their economies could complement one another, such as cars, electronics and machinery, which are all things that Russia manufactures and Iran needs, Russia's production capacity is limited. This is why trade between the two countries is pretty tiny, and hasn't really changed post-Ukraine. Trade with Iran constituted less than 1% of Russia's total trade in 2023, making Iran Russia's 16th largest partner, and trade actually decreased by 17% last year, despite signing multiple trade agreements. Something similar is true when it comes to military technology. Originally, it looked like Iran and Russia could fill gaps in each other's militaries. Russia needs Iranian drones, while Iran needs Russian air defense and aircraft. However, Russia now manufactures Shahed drones domestically and doesn't need Iranian missiles, while Iran has been unable to convince Russia to sell its Su-35 fighter jets or S-400 missile systems, in large part because Russia doesn't want to upset Iran's Arab neighbours. Again, this speaks to yet another problem for Iran and Russia. Russia wants to keep good relations with Arab states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both because Russia relies on them to avoid financial sanctions and because they need Arab cooperation to control global oil prices via OPEC+. While Iran's relationship with its Arab neighbours have improved recently, thanks to their mutual opposition to Israel and the election of reformist President Masoud Pezeshkian in July, Arab states still don't want Iran to get its hands on the latest Russian air tech, and this tension puts a diplomatic ceiling on how close Russia can get to Iran. This is also why Russia has been such a consistent opponent of Iran's nuclear program. Russia was a key player in the negotiation of the Iran nuclear deal, commonly known as the JCPOA, and supported all 6 UN Security Council resolutions against Iran in the run-up to the deal. While Russia has its own motives for preventing nuclear proliferation, the strength of its opposition to Iran's nuclear program is at least consistent with its desire to maintain good relations with the Gulf states. Nuclear issues have actually been a long-standing point of tension in Russia-Iran relations. Way back in the early 2000s, Iranian officials expressed irritation at the fact that Russia was taking its time building the Bushehr nuclear power plant in western Iran. And more recently, Iran was annoyed that Russia tried to leverage the JCPOA to avoid Western sanctions, by essentially telling the West that they would block the JCPOA's prospective revival unless they dropped some of the post-Ukraine sanctions. All in all, while Russia and Iran have clearly grown closer since Putin's invasion of Ukraine, a fair few wrinkles remain, and these will probably act as a sort of ceiling on relations in the near future. Much depends on the foreign policy posture taken by the newly elected Pezeshkian administration. While reformists tend to be more optimistic about mending relations with the West, or at least Europe, this looks unlikely at the moment, and Pezeshkian might well decide that a deeper relationship with Russia is necessary in the context of rising tensions in the Middle East. Now, while the relationship between Iran and Russia might be important, what's also important is the relationship between your razor and your face. If you're sick of the gimmicks other shaving brands use, the subscriptions, moisturizing strips, lasers, whatever, then you'll need to check out Henson. Because, and here's the dirty secret about the razor industry, even the cheapest dollar store disposable razors will likely give you a reasonably smooth shave. The challenge is the impact they'll have on your skin. To protect your skin while shaving, you need to actually support the blade well, and Henson can provide that quality shave even with cheap blades, thanks to the Henson razor, which they produce at their aerospace machine shop, which also produces parts for the ISS, and perfectly holds the blade at a 30-degree angle and extends it only 0.0013 inches, less than the width of a human hair. In classic TLDR style, that's important for 3 reasons. Firstly, it's way cheaper. Those fancy blade cartridges aren't necessarily designed to provide a better shaving experience. They're about jacking up prices. Instead, Henson's razor takes standard blades that cost just 10 cents each, meaning that while the initial handle might be more expensive, in the long run, you'll save a ton of cash. Secondly, it's far better for the environment to be using individual blades than joining the 2 billion razor cartridges thrown away every year in the US alone, with Henson's products containing no plastic at all, even in their packaging. Finally, this superb engineering and precise blade tech just provides an incredible shave. If you want to try it out, click the link in the description, then add a razor and 100 blades to your cart. Then once you've done that, add our discount code TLDR at checkout and you'll get all of those blades totally free.